Hi, and welcome to this boost of daily positivity from the EduKit team. My name is Nat, and I am the CEO of EduKit, and we are putting on these daily sessions from now until half term at least to help students who may be studying at home to stay positive and optimistic and hear stories from speakers who are really interested in sharing how they're doing at this time that we appreciate is quite challenging for people, and also a bit about their journeys and their pasts, and you can have an opportunity as well to ask questions if you want to. So if you are watching this live, you can ask questions. If you scroll down on the page, you should be able to see a question box below. Just add your name, your first name, your year group, and the question that you'd like to ask of either me or any of our guests. We've got two great guests lined up for you today. The topic is how to stay really positive while learning from home. And through all of the sessions, we're always going to have a focus on mental health and well-being, because we appreciate, particularly at this time, it's really important to stay positive and open and to be able to reach out if you need any help or support at all. So everything that we do is going to be about reinforcing that image, that message, so that you feel really comfortable talking about how you're really feeling. So I'm going to hand over to our first guest, who's a gentleman called Leo Smith, and he is from CXKX. So hopefully we'll be able to see Leo. Hi, Leo.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hello. Good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm all right. Quite excited about this. Never done anything like this before, so it's a first for me. So I'm a bit of a newbie to the
Yes, it's quite new for us as well, but we just felt this format was really important given everything that's happening at this time. So I'm going to hand over to you. It'd be great if you can share with us, because I'm fascinated to find out a bit more about what you do, about some of the artwork I know that you're going to be sharing with us today, and also your journey. So I'm going to hand over to you. Over to you, Leo.
So hi everybody. I'm Leo Smith. I exhibit just with my name Leo. I've always done that, or since leaving college, 26 years ago. I live in London, but I studied in Wakefield, and where I did graphic design, and then from there I went to Sunderland University to study painting. And I've always been interested in lots of different kinds of art and design, fashion, film, and so my practice includes lots of different things. And the one reason I did painting, went to study painting, because I thought with painting, it would be a way to explore anything. Fine arts allow for a kind of movement towards working in film and video, as well as fashion maybe, or architecture. And rather than going to, say, to study fashion, where you're less likely to have time to explore areas that are not directly connected to it. Same with design. So I'm going to give you just a quick view of my room here, because I'm, like everybody, locked down, and I live with somebody who has asthma, and so we have to be quite careful of what we're doing. And normally I live between here and Berlin, and my son's in Berlin, so I haven't seen him for nearly a year now, and that's a strange thing. But we are able to communicate through the internet, obviously. But this room has become kind of like, I'm going to give you a quick tour, because it's my workspace, it's my office space, it's my lounge, and sometimes I sleep here. And I've installed this little thing here just now. This is a mobile. I'm going to switch it on. This is one of the things that I use for when I work. So my work is installation based, and it's also environmentally kind of based. Some of the works. So this is a mobile that goes round. It wouldn't normally be like this, obviously, but I just hung it from the ceiling this morning, and then I projecting onto the wall over there. But it's quite simple. But I use these methods of exhibiting, making as a way of constructing quite simple little narratives. This one's quite abstract, but basically it's about buildings, to do with buildings going up and buildings going down. Partly to do with, it was influenced by the Twin Towers being destroyed. It's about 20 years ago. Anyway, so here you can see my table and think. So this is where I work, and there's a sewing machine, a drill. You can see rollers for printing things. These two things here I've just picked up. This is which I like the sound of. This is a musical instrument, sewing machine for making things. These are drawings at the back here. These are all my books. Old record player, it still works, just fixed it. Sofa. So this is kind of where I'm living and working and making. I've been making banners in here. Just turn that off so it doesn't make so much noise. So I've been making banners that are some of them meters and meters long, and so I have to rearrange the whole space and construct things in here. So it's become this like little world that's constantly changing and shifting around. So I can kind of make things. I have to take all the tables out and push the furniture to the sides to be able to lay out fabrics on the floor. But I'm also working quite small as well, which I use a table for. But it's this constantly evolving and changing kind of space. So I'm gonna. So one thing that I've constantly in my work, another thing, is using sketchbooks. And I just picked up some sketchbooks, and I noticed. I don't know if you can see in the corner there. There's a point with my finger. Figure out how to do this. So how do I do that? So there is an old violin, and this sketchbook is one of my earliest sketchbooks from when I was a student, and this sketchbook is kind of dedicated to that violin that's over there. So I bought that violin, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago on a market stall, longer actually, 35 years ago, and then this book became a kind of sketchbook for that violin, and I was exploring the shape of it, the marks on it. It was broken when I first bought it. It had all been smashed up, and I that's kind of but this sketchbook became the kind of a means of exploring that object. So and I've continued to use sketchbooks ever since, but these days it have become more notebooks. So I tend to draw and write in them as well. So I mean, this was a drawing I did the other night, and here again in this room. So exploring this space as a way to kind of keep myself sane. And I've been doing self-portraits using my as a camera in the space and just exploring that. So photographing the room, drawing the room, but also photographing myself in this space as partly to do with this, this situation we're in, to make a sense of it, or to do something kind of constructive in this time. Because although we're all kind of crazy busy doing different things, whether it's I guess you're doing schoolwork, but I'm helping people with protesting as well as legal cases, and running a little charity and organizing kind of projects with those. It's really important to make sure there's space for myself, because if I don't have my sketchbook and if I can't go for walks, then it's I really feel I'm going to go bonkers. Now I realise I've talked already for 9 minutes and I haven't even started. So I'm going to quickly ask to share the screen, and we're just going to show you a few works of mine, and maybe we'll put a link of where the website is so you can see more pictures. Should we just quickly run through some pictures? Have we ever got a minute to do that? So these are, and we're going to go through these really fast. So this is a a shadow work. So I used to work a lot with shadows, and this is again an early installation piece working with a particular building, and working with the idea that a place has got its own memory. And I think this is potentially quite interesting at this kind of time where we are now, that how your room could have its own memory and how you could capture that. And these are made quite simply by, I put the object on that table, project a light onto it using a lamp, draw that out, and then paint it in using the kind of color paints that I think refer most closely to that kind of shadow. So it's obviously going to be a grey, but it could be a quite yellowish grey or a reddish grey. The next picture is also, again, a shadow using a pot. So there's usually an object or something still there, or something real, like the little stand there or the table. And then the projection is the pot, which then I again draw out, colour in, and then remove. And again, it's working with this memory of this place, and then how you can kind of build how a place might have its own story and its own memories. Let's have a look at the next one. So we'll jump past the next two. These are, all these images are on the website, which should be a link for. We can put a link for this. That was a girl eating chocolate cake. There's a video of and it was linked to a fairy tale that I wrote, but with a link to Hansel and Gretel. And so I had a girl just constantly eating chocolate cake in the film. And just run through the next few, and then we can just show them the pictures. This is a little model of a dry stone wall, and I taught myself to do dry stone walls just using stones that I found and breaking them up. And then I went on to build some dry stone walls. So the next image that you're going to see, the curious wall. We go down to the next one. Is a big kind of wall that's in the landscape. So I taught myself using little stones and making models, and then once I'd got a kind of hang of that, and after speaking to some dry stone wallers and getting some tips from them, I built this one. I did a few more, and yeah, just go run through the next. Yeah, and again, this is working within a particular environment. This is working with a city environment. The dry stone walls are in the countryside, and this is working with what's available. So with both of these, the dry stone wall and this, I was just working in a disused site where there'd been a building, and these were the tiles in the floor, and I chopped the tiles out to write dance. If you go to the next one, you can see the dance floor. And I took earth from around there. Someone came along and gave me some grass seeds, and I took moss that was growing wildly around there as well, and some plants, and put them into this space, and created this little garden. I think we'll pause there. We've slightly run over the 13 minutes, but we can come back to things. There's a lot of information there. So if there are any questions, we could, or otherwise I can you switch your sound on, Natalie?
I wonder how many times I'm going to do that during these webinars. I'm off mute. Thank you so much, Leo. Yes, I certainly have some questions, but we also have questions coming in. So thank you so much for that. So we have one question from Sam in year 9, who said, does art help you with your mental health and staying positive? And if so, how?
I think being an artist and having a creative outlet is brilliant for your mental health, because you've got your own space, whether it's in a sketchbook or a canvas, building something, but you're dealing with objects or something kind of real, and you're putting ideas outside of yourself, and you can use that to explore whether it's to do with feelings, how you respond to different people, different places, and you can do that in a very, very simple kind of ways, or really complex ways. Art's to do with how we respond to where we are, and that can be simple in the sense that I could draw a the scene in front of me, a landscape, but it could also be where I am mentally and what are the things that I could do to kind of express that. And that again could be just through expressive painting or the things that I choose to draw. But also the process of doing it is a really useful thing, to be actively making something and doing something. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. So how does one get started if there are kids at home who then want to be able to tap into that creativity and that process of making art with things around them? And I find your room really, really fascinating. What's a good way for them to start to explore their surroundings and to see the art in maybe what's just in their living room?
So there's an artist called Joseph Beuys, and he said everybody's an artist, and it's everybody can be an artist, but actually everybody has potential to be creative. You don't have to be a painter or a sculptor, or you could be interested in design, could be interested in fashion, music, theatre, performance, and it's deciding what you like. Now, I like everything, and sometimes that's not always a good thing, because I'm just could be running around all over the shop, and people don't always take you seriously when you say you're interested in everything. But if you're interested in singing, then you just have to sing, and finding a space to do it. But then to develop that, take that further, maybe you want to start writing your own songs or playing an instrument, or if you want to do visual arts, you start with think about, do you want to make things? Are you interested in building things? And you can use the simplest, stuff that's around. I'm using twigs. All I'm using at the moment is just sticks. And I go into the woods, and I go on the Hampstead Heath, which is local to where I live. And without Hampstead Heath, I'd be going insane. But I can go and walk around in there. There's areas where it's kind of more kind of wild, and I find twigs that are interesting shapes, and I use those to kind of build things. I also add things to them, but I'm using. You can see the background there. The studies in the background are twigs stuck onto paper, and then I'm using ink to kind of add to those as well, and they're glued on. So you can use extremely simple kind of stuff. Collage is the easiest way to work in many ways. And also, I collect envelopes, and I use envelopes to make sketchbooks. And so it's good when you get them, and schools will have millions of these. I use A5 envelopes. I open them carefully, cut around the edges, and that's 2 sides. And one thing which is interesting when you get when you open an envelope, is you get different kind of qualities of paper. Different qualities. You get maybe different colours of paper. But also qualities. So inside, you've got this quite nice texture. You've also got a window. So if you can use that to draw something through, or it could be you could build up kind of layers of windows where different things are happening through your sketchbook. And these, that one was basically, we've got a page there. But what I would normally do is cut them into A5 pieces, and then I would fix them on one edge and put quite a lot together. And if I've got a piece of card, then I might stick a piece of card at the back, so it's a bit more kind of solid, and it's useful if you want to take those outside. But that's just a really easy way of making a simple and quite interesting sketchbook. And you've also then got, you might have stamps or people's addresses written on them, and you can incorporate those into your designs as well. This is an envelope from the local council with a green edge. I really like these green edges. That's and materials to for making things, pencils, it can be really difficult to, even having a decent pencil. But there's also other ways of working. You can use. I was thinking about using some what's it called? Vegetables to kind of what's that red vegetable called? That's really deep red. I've forgotten the name of it. I want to say it in German.
Not beetroot.
Beetroot. Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot.
That's all right.
So beetroot, it's a great color, and it's really good for drawing with. There are other things you can get colors from.
And so you use the beetroot as ink then?
Yeah, you could. Either to draw with, or you could soak that in water and mush it up and get the color out of it. To make a red ink. You're saying you're using a food supply to make food, but actually using the skin from the beetroot, you could also use that. But there is, you can also find. Hopefully, if you're at school, then maybe the teachers can supply you with pencils and whatever. But you can work extremely simply. Clay, digging up the garden and see if you can find some clay in the garden.
With parents' permission, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably start digging up their garden. But yeah.
And things don't have to be. With a lot of my things, they're not permanent. So it's also not being precious about stuff.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I do have another question for you. So I have a question from Joanne in year 11 who says she absolutely loves art, but what can you do after school if you're an artist? So what sort of career?
Can you go to school?
No, after you finish school, what sort of careers can you go into if you're?
So year 11 is you are
coming up to what would have been GCSEs, but coming up to the end of.
So I left school at 16, and I really didn't like school, but I loved art. And I went straight from at 16 to art college, and I did graphic design. Now it's much more easy to go to, and lots of people go straight to college when they're 16, even if it's to do A levels. And in colleges, they tend to have a much broader kind of selection of different things you can try. There's, I guess, BTEC courses, a whole range of different kind of BTEC courses. If you're generally interested in kind of all arts or visual arts, let's say, then if you want to go to university, which I would recommend everybody does, then you need to do a foundation course. And to do a foundation course, you need to have done an A level or probably a BTEC course to have some kind of college qualification to go to university. But there are so many options for. It really depends what you're interested in. If you want to say what you're interested in, then we could talk about that a little bit more. But I think the first thing to do is to do your A levels if you're going to do A levels, or go to do a BTEC course in an art course, and then go from there to university.
And you went on to teaching, did you? After you finished your
I've
studies?
never done a teaching qualification. I've worked with. So I left school, did graphic design, then got bored with that, really. Was interested in a lot more things. So then I went from graphic design to do a foundation art course. So I didn't have any A levels, but I'd done a diploma in graphic design. So that enabled me to do the foundation course. And from the foundation course, I went and studied painting for 3 years. And then because I'd done graphic design, it was really useful because that's how I could make money. I also did bits of teaching from being quite young, from leaving college. But I also worked in art galleries and museums. I worked as a technician. I was a film programmer for the Whitechapel Art Gallery in London and the AV technician for them. When I'm in Berlin, I used to work a lot as a technician there, working in galleries and museums. I work with fashion designers as a photographer. And I think that's the thing you shouldn't pin yourself down unless you really want to, because there are so many options. I make films for people, made films for galleries, and made my own films, mostly video. Like it's all video now. 4 or 5 years ago, I went back to college. So I'm now 57, but a few years ago, the education system was changing dramatically. I was losing all my work, and how my art practice was also changing. I was becoming much more interested in environmental issues, and so I decided to go back to college to do an MA in art and education, to refocus. So there's no, even though I'm nearly 60, there's still things to learn, and you can still change, and you can still go on and do new things. There's never a point in your life where you can.
Yeah. Lots of varied careers you can get into with a foundation in art, as you said. It's
and
it's teaching, it's museums, it's there are lots of different opportunities.
Yeah, and a basic art practice is really useful, just for understanding materials, how to work with things. If you do sculpture, how you build things, whether it's putting up shelves, doing plumbing at home, all this. It's amazing the kind of the general knowledge you get, and it's not unusual for artists to work as technicians in galleries, because they've got such a great knowledge of how to build things, how to put things up.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really useful.
I have a question from a student who hasn't left their name. How's lockdown impacting you?
Obviously, like everybody, I'm trying to be really careful, so I'm not traveling. I'm not able to see my family. That's my son. I haven't seen my relatives who are all in Yorkshire. I haven't seen them for over a year. So those get quite dramatic. My work totally came to an end, because I did all my teaching work. I was supposed to start teaching in a hospital in London, and that's been postponed. So there's been quite dramatic things like that. Not being able to, go out to a cafe, or to go to the pub and have a pizza, that kind of stuff. I walk past my local pub where they do really good pizzas, and I lean against the wall and go, when are you going to open again? And it's just like, I could have gone out and I could have been running around, but I just think it's unhealthy. I think we have to be really, really careful and think about everybody. So there's been dramatic impacts, but there's also been a bit. I've been really busy doing stuff to help protesters who are protesting HS2, mostly the kind of train line. So I've been able to make banners for them. So I've been doing useful stuff as well.
And talk a little bit more. I know it's not the time. A little bit more about the protesting that you've been doing and how you've got behind the causes you care about.
So it's I don't know. You probably know. My work's always had an environmental kind of interest, and my teaching for probably nearly 15 years, I've always tried to bring in environmental kind of issues and concerns into that, whether it's to do with weather patterns and how we deal with our natural environment. And a few years ago, I became a little bit interested in helping out Extinction Rebellion, again with kind of printing stuff and making kind of banners for them and stuff like that. And through that, knowing people who are protesting. So there's like people living in trees, which is the kind of craziest thing. Some people have been living in trees for months and months, or living at the side of the road to kind of protest against this crazy train line. And so I don't want to get arrested. It would, it's not good for my teaching, and I work within charity, so I have to be careful doing things like that. But I can support with helping them with legal advice, so doing research for that. I've also been writing loads of emails to MPs and government, something I've never done before, and it's quite interesting because actually sometimes it has an impact. The questions that I've sent to MPs have been brought up in Parliament. So you can have some slight impact there, whether it makes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's fascinating because anybody can write to their MP, and actually in some of the webinars we're going to be talking about how children can get politically engaged as well. But we are at time now, so thank you so much for sharing a little bit about how you've been coping, about what you do, looking at your space, which I find fascinating. I certainly won't look at an envelope the same way again. Never saw the opportunity to use envelopes and twigs for art. So hopefully there's lots of inspiration there for young people at home. So thank you so much again, Leo. Really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. And if it's going to happen again at some point in the future, then maybe we can think about how we can build on what we've done today. If people are going to return. So maybe
okay. Thank you so much. That has been the end of our first half-hour segment. And as I said, a huge thanks again to Leo Smith for talking about how he's staying positive through the artwork that he's doing at home and some of the other activities he's involved in. So as I said, this hour-long segment, and we're now in the second half an hour piece of that, is all about how you can stay really positive and engaged at home, given that many of you are studying at home, you're learning at home at the moment. So we're going to continue on that theme, and on the theme generally of positive mental health and well-being, and being really open about our feelings, because we appreciate that people are struggling. So it's a time when more than ever before, we just need to really reach out to others if we want to talk about something or if we need help. So I'm now going to bring in our next speaker. His name is Matt Pritchard, and he's going to be talking to us about his science magic shows. So really excited to meet Matt. Let me just take
Matt. Hi, everyone. I love Leo's session, and I think actually what I'd like to share is going to dovetail really nicely with that, because I approach quite a lot of the same themes that Leo's exploring through his artwork, but perhaps from a different angle. So one thing I wanted to start off with is show you something I've made here. So we've got this staircase, and you'll see there's some lettering on there, and we've got the word science. Now, if I was to turn it this way, we end up with another word, but it's a backwards word. So this is where, and I adore mirrors. So if we put a mirror involved, then we can end up with, there we go. Let's try and get this in there. We get the word magic in there. So we've got science and magic in the reflection, and that's really where the two parts of my life come together. So my academic background was I studied physics. I went through school and university and worked with stupidly powerful lasers in a lab for a few years. But my childhood is very much, the passion has been Lego and magic. And so I started doing magic when I was 10 years old, and gradually as I got older, did a bit more professionally. And now I fuse the two together, and you might be sat watching there going, well, actually, surely magic and science are opposites, aren't they? Well, for me, magic and science, it's all about wondering about the world, about exploring new possibilities, about being curious. The big difference is scientists try and discover how the world works and then share it with the rest of the world and try and use that. Magicians maybe a little bit more selfish. They discover something amazing and they share the amazing part, but they don't always talk about the how, that what's going on behind the scenes. They sort of keep that part to themselves, but I think they share that sense of wonder. And so I have a little mantra that I use when I work in schools, and I use magic as a way to engage people, but also to get them thinking as well. Because if you figure out how a magic trick works, it's very similar to how you think scientifically and figure. So rather than my staircase, which was a pattern with two sets of words on, I took it further. So I've made this. I've made some pyramids, some three-sided pyramids here, and if you hold it upright, it looks like the word wow is formed in the lettering. And then if I twist it this way, we end up with a second word. We end up with the word how. Twist it a little bit further and we get our third word, which is now. And so for me, this is what I do. I love sharing the wow moments, sort of having that moment where you discover something new, something surprising. I love the figuring out the how side of things, but I also want to take it further, and rather than just stop with when you've learned how something works, take it further. Go, now what else could I use that for? Now what if? And you know what, those two questions are great questions to ask. Now what else? Now what if? Not just in science, just in everyday life. Now today we're thinking a bit about sort of well-being and how we can keep ourselves going during this tough time. And for me, one of the things that's been helpful has been staying curious. There was a study, in fact, there's a big survey organization called Gallup, and every year they survey over 100,000 people across the world in their sort of happiness survey. And they want to know which countries are more happy than others, and has the general happiness of the world gone up or gone down? And to measure that, they ask 5 questions. And one of those questions is, did you learn something new yesterday? Did you learn something new yesterday? Because what they've discovered is actually by learning, discovering, being curious, asking questions is a great source of well-being. And even though during lockdown we're stuck inside most of the time, and often we're having to engage with people through electronic cameras and screens, we can still be curious, because the world around us is full of fascinating things. And one thing you'll notice is, certainly as we go on with my session, is so much of the stuff I do has just been made from cardboard and from tape and things around my own home. There's so much amazing stuff in the everyday world. Often we search for big fancy things, but sometimes it's just right under our noses. So before I go any further, I really love the artwork that Leo produced with the shadows, like the stool there, with the fake or the shadows of the past there. And I want to share just one other thing I made briefly. This is a very similar to my science magic staircase at the start. And this time, rather than printing, I've cut some holes in things. And you'll notice if I twist this way, we end up with the word right. And if we twist it the other way, we end up with the word left. And that's fun to play with, but it's even better if you shine a light on it. So I've got a picture that I can just show you of what happens when you put a bright spotlight on that piece of paper, and you end up with the word right being illuminated, but the shadow says the word left. And so I spend a lot of my time creating these things. I love the personal challenge of doing this. I find it quite mindful doing something like this. This will be an evening's job of carefully figuring out where the letter should go, using a bit of math skills there, and then using some artistic craft skills as well, and spending some time with a scalpel cutting it out, and then experimenting and discovering. And at the end of the evening, I've unwound from a sometimes quite a stressful day and actually produced something off the back of it. And that for me has been another source of sort of well-being during this difficult season. And another source has been just getting outside. Now, I was the type of student, I had asthma as a kid, and I was the kid when we ever did cross-country running that I was always the last to sort of basically huff and puff my way back into the changing rooms. I was the really unfit kid, and I hated sports. I wasn't that great with the hand-eye coordination. But this year, even before lockdown started, I started running, and I'm not a particularly good runner, but one of the things I've really enjoyed is just that daily exercise of getting out And I live in Birmingham, and if you ever come to Birmingham, you'll find that the Brummies are very proud of the fact that there's more canals in Birmingham than there is in Venice. And so there's hundreds of miles of canal towpaths, and they're fantastic to run along because they're flat. You can pretty much guarantee it's not going to go up or down until you get to a bridge. And so for a beginner runner, you can go around, and also it takes you through largely forgotten areas of the city. When you live in a city, it can be quite oppressive because of the big structures and the noise. And then just to get out on a towpath and get some silence and get out in nature has been really good for my own mental health. And what I find amazing is you go out there and you can run past herons. There's an awful lot of wildlife out there that normally the busyness of life we just ignore. And I think, do you know what, one of the benefits for me of 2020 has just been having to slow down, and I notice more. And I want to share with you a project that I've been running for the last 2.5 years. It's called Words on Wonder, and it's got a website for it, and it's just simply wordsonwonder.com. And it started because I was fascinated by the word wonder. And I kept on talking to friends and colleagues and saying, well, what does wonder mean to you? And maybe you could think about it for a moment. How would you define wonder? Is it the same as awe? Is it the same as curiosity? Do you know, if we asked everyone, we'll get different answers. And so I thought, well, let's try and unpack it. So I started interviewing people that I found fascinating. So I tracked down astronauts and bishops and Las Vegas con artists. I tracked down consultant anaesthetists at Great Ormond Street Hospital. Some friends, some people have been recommended, artists, philosophers, explorers, theologians, really diverse people, and just asked them what made them go, wow. Tell me a bit more about their work and how they're inspired. And so if you're interested, I'd really encourage you. There's about 133 interviews online. Some are audio recordings, a couple of videos, mainly text and photographs, full of really fascinating people. And one of the super interesting things is the fact that you end up with two quite different job roles next to each other, talking about the same ideas. And when I look at the results from all those interviews and boil them down, and sort of one of the things that comes up is this idea of slowing down, which we've talked about, getting out into nature. There's a word that I've discovered last year called biophilia. Biophilia is this like almost connection we as humans want to have with the rest of the world. And there's also another thing that comes out of the interviews is this idea called Vujardé. Now you might be sat going, Matt, you've got it wrong. It's déjà vu. No, Vujardé is seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. And I think for me, that's one of the things that came out of Leo's talk earlier. Was a lot of his work is it's finding the extraordinary in the everyday, the magical in the mundane. And that's what I do with my craft projects. Things like, I can show you this year and a bit ago, I became moderately famous for about a week because I invented an optical illusion using a toilet roll. So I'm going to show you that. I'm just going to switch cameras for this so we can get a top-down view. I've just cut the end of it, and you can see here it looks like a arrow, and the arrow is pointing this way. And if I turn it the other way, it still always points to the left. If you put a mirror behind it, the opposite happens. The mirror points in the opposite direction. You get a different perspective on things. And so I said an everyday object, you can't get much more ordinary than a toilet roll, and it has this wonderful, wonderful property to it. I'm going to show you a video I just made before Christmas. Hopefully this video will work on the on the screen here. So this Christmassy theme video, you have to watch carefully because it happens quickly. There we go. Shall we see it again? Again, my love of Lego is coming through, fusing with a bit of science and with a bit of magic there. So that's like a little bit about me. What I would love to do, I've got other stuff to share with you, but I'm sure there's some questions coming through. So maybe we could hand back to Nat, and we can have if you've got any questions, Nat, we can have a chat about that, and then I can show you some more things as we go along.
Oh yes, I'd definitely love to see more of your magic. I mean, I thought I was trying to spot how you managed to get the center there. So yes, definitely want to see more magic. I do have a question from Imran in year 10. He says, where do you get your ideas from? And I have to say the one with the arrow was fascinating. So yeah, well, where does the imagination for your ideas?
Yeah, so a few different things to that. So thank you, Imran. I think sometimes we have this idea that you have to be someone special to be really creative, and you have to be someone special to get great ideas. No, I don't believe that at all. I think one of the keys to having ideas is just to feed your head with ideas. So I'll take my camera off here, and you'll get to see my messy office here. So over here, my office is very much been sponsored by IKEA. You'll see the shelves are full of boxes, lots of Lego up there, and one of the key things is the books as well. And so for me, I love feeding my head with ideas. I love reading, so that's how I get the ideas. You might love learning through video or trying something with your hands or a different way. So I feed my creativity by learning about other people's ideas, and often being creative is just a case of taking two ideas and linking them together. So do you know what, shall I give you a little hint as to how that snowman and Father Christmas thing worked? So I'm going to show you another video that I did, and using a similar principle that I use. So let's see if this works. So hopefully you saw something pop up behind there, and I'd been playing around with glasses and realized you could hide things behind glasses, and they enter this like invisible zone. And so I played with that, and then I just took the idea a bit further. I get ideas from sort of following fascinating people on Instagram and Twitter, and take their ideas and build on them or adapt them. But also sometimes there's some wonderful ideas that most people have forgotten about. Some of my favorite books on the bookshelves are ones Victorian science amusement books, full of experiments that today might be somewhat illegal or dangerous. Some you just can't get the equipment for, but there's some absolute gems in there. And sometimes you can get inspiration by looking to the past as well. And I think another key is just having the time to, one idea I might have in February, and then I might have a solution to that in June. And it takes time. And this last year for me has actually been a strangely creative year, just because I've had the time for those ideas to bubble and percolate.
That's fascinating. And I think it's really in line with what you were saying earlier about this actually being an opportunity to slow down and just take things in. And then sometimes from that space comes creativity. And I think, hopefully that's something that will be useful to some of the young people watching. We have a question also about mental health and well-being. One question was, what were your first thoughts when you found out you had to stop seeing your friends and family because of lockdown? And I suppose linked to that would be, how does your art and your science and your magic tricks, how does that actually sort of help you with that situation?
Yeah, now in one sense, I was fortunate in that as my wife will say, I've got very little desire to socialize with, and I have a small friendship circle, and a lot of my friends, to be honest, are on the other side of the world, and so I communicate through social media and emails and phone calls anyway. So I've not got too many friends local to where I live, and so that part of it didn't hit me that hard. My ideal of an ideal night is just staying in, especially because a lot of my work up until this last year has been traveling. I would be on the road 4 or 5 days a week, visiting schools, doing science shows. And so when I had time off, I'd want to stay home. So that didn't hit me hard. What I really struggled with was a question about my identity, because I think for so many of us, who we are is defined by what we do. And when lockdown hit, and pretty much overnight, my diary for the next 6 months just disappeared overnight, and my whole work evaporated. And I think so much of who I was wrapped up in what I did and the money that I could bring in to support my family. And because that had been taken away, I struggled with that, because it was not, it was a big chunk of my identity that went, as opposed to just being, I was very much a doing type of person.
And did you find that using your art, was it something that actually, you know, albeit you couldn't do the things that were in your diary before, but then, and I do call it art because there's some of those demonstrations that you've shown us are kind of really show the connection between art and science, actually, but being able to be really creative helped you. And I mean, did you?
Oh, definitely. So I talked about just having something to do, and actually spending the day making something. It gave my mind something to focus on rather than worry about other things. I very much think wonder and worry are two sides of the same coin. So the way we wonder and ask those what else, what if, and what else questions can be really positive, and it can lead us to discovering new things. But it can also be quite negative and beat us up. We can worry and be really anxious when we start asking these what if, what else questions, like imagining what the future might be like and imagining the worst case scenario. And so by giving my brain something to focus on that was positive, or at least a distraction from the negative around me, that was helpful. And it also just meant, because my diary just been cleared, it meant I could get up in the morning and do something rather than just stay around just feeling sorry for myself. And I discovered that I could perform in a different way. I could perform over social media by putting out quirky little videos like that one. I'll show you another one briefly. So this one is a really sneaky illusion. And so I'll show you again, because it's a lovely vanish.
And no camera tricks. This is just
absolutely no camera tricks. You'll see in a moment, Nat, how it's done.
Please do, because I always love to know how.
So I just made 2 levels, and I've just dropped the ball over the edge, and it just runs underneath that top level. So
can we see it again? Can we see the trick
sure.
one last time? Now I know how it's done. I always want to know.
Let me find where I've put it. There we go. So there's a little edge sort of halfway along that's like a cliff edge, and I'm just dropping it over the edge, and because of the way the camera's positioned, you don't see the ball drop down and goes outside. And then if you get the other view, you can see just what's happening. It just goes, and I could just keep doing that on all day. And I spend most of my time though trying to eliminate telltale shadows and things like that gives the illusion away. Right.
That's fascinating. Thank you so much. And we have a question that's come through from Lizzie in Year 9. So she's asking, how can children start doing science tricks at home?
Yeah, so one of the best ways is, I would say books are the best way, but at the moment, trying to get a new book, unless you order it, there's quite a few sort of resources online. Just if you search Science Magic, there's loads of different YouTube channels that do that. I've got my own, which is just Science Magic Shows, and Instagram Science Magician, and I post things. It's partly a case of just seeing what's out there and understanding what's going on, and then I said earlier, trying to adapt those for your own purposes. And I just set myself the challenge of no camera tricks, no editing, and do it that way. But you might come up with your own rules. There's a wonderful producer called Zach King who does wonderful illusions, but he does that through most of the time computer editing and some clever perspective stuff. And he has a different set of rules and produces some wonderful stuff. There's another one, it's Kevin Parry, who does lots of stop motion animation, and he uses his skills with a different set of rules as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And do keep posting your questions, students, if there's anything else, because we're coming up to time. So if there's anything else you want to ask Matt, do note those now. Matt, would you be able to maybe just outline how students could maybe get started with that toilet roll one that you showed before? Because I wonder, I mean, everybody's got old toilet roll tubes at home, and maybe that's a nice little experiment that children can
do. So one way we can do this is so this is the shape we're aiming to make here. So it's like a sawtooth pattern. So it goes down and then it goes up to the other one. So there's two bits going down and then it goes. So to make this, the simple way to do this, I'm going to switch cameras because we can get a view here. So we've got, that's that camera seems to have frozen for a second. Let's see if we can wake it up again. Oh, sorry. I've remembered, I took it off to show everyone around my office, and it's I've not put it on. That's why it's not doing that. So let's see if that's any better. It's it doesn't seem to. It seems to have fallen asleep. So we'll do it this way. So you take your toilet roll, give it a squeeze, and then what you want to do is
Can you do full screen again? Because we still got the other.
Oh, sorry, full screen.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank
take toilet roll, squeeze like this, and you've made a cut on opposite sides about a finger's width, and then you're aiming to start at the top of one cut. And you work your way around, being careful of your fingertips at this point. Cut round and aim to finish at the bottom of the second cut. So you're cutting out a triangle like this, and then you just do the same. So you're already at the start. So you cut, working your way around, and you end up that, and you've got that shape, which when you look side on doesn't look that impressive. But if you look at an angle, then you start to see that arrow shape, and you might just want to just trim the corners just to make it a bit more nice and smooth arrows. So that's one thing you can play with.
Fantastic. I think that's something everybody can have a go at. In fact, I think I might try that myself tonight. I think you're right. It's about wonder. It's about seeing, and as you said, it's following on from Leo earlier. It's just about seeing the creativity and the beauty in things around us and how we can experiment with them. It's about asking questions, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. Keep asking questions. And sometimes you won't get an answer. Sometimes you'll get an answer you didn't expect. And sometimes you'll get a really wonderful, surprising answer.
Brilliant. Well, listen, we're about at time. Thank you so much, Matt.
Really, you're welcome. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you for sharing that magic trick. I would have been racking my brains as how you've done it later. So I'm really glad that you shared that with us. Thank you so much. And I do hope that we'll see you again on another webinar over the coming weeks.
I'd love to.
Thank you. Thank you. So, yes, just going to wrap up. I hope you've enjoyed the last hour. Thanks again to Leo Smith and Matt Pritchard for sharing some of the ways that you can be really creative and imaginative and have some fun at home with household objects, twigs, envelopes, toilet rolls, all sorts of things, and create your own art and science. We'll be back again tomorrow from 12 to 1 p.m. for another burst of positivity. Until then, you take care of yourself and each other. Thanks.